The Breeze contest is a cool new recently released Celeste contest with 75 beginner maps, which is pretty crazy. So I decided to get this mod and play through the top 10 winners of the Breeze contest and review them in this video. And before I do start, I do want to preface this and say that I do think all 75 maps of this are awesome, not just the top 10. It's just, this contest is huge and I really wouldn't have had enough time to play through all 75 maps and cover them in this video, but I still do extend my respect to every single map and every single mapper that contributed to this contest, regardless of if it's in the top 10 or not. Okay, well, let's begin then. I did play through these maps in order that they placed in the top 10, which you can just find in the results video. I'll link that in the description if you're interested. I think before I go straight into the individual maps, I kind of want to give a summary of what I felt while playing the Breeze contest, and I just think in general it was very, like, chill, you could say. Maybe it's just because it's beginner gameplay, which is quite a lot different to the recent maps I've been playing, like goddamn Shock Flip. But this mod was just so insanely chill to play through, because all the visuals were very nice, all the music was really good. Shout out to all the music that was put into this mod, because it's all great. Okay, that's out of the way, now I'll get into the actual individual maps themselves in the top 10. So starting at number 10 was The Floor is Lava by Goose. This map was cool. In fact, you're gonna hear me say this about every map I played, because the entire top 10 was very peak. The main gimmick of this map is this key berry right here, which acts like a normal berry, but if you pick it up near a door, it's gonna open up that door, just like a key. The challenge of this map revolves around you trying to keep this berry on you as long as possible, seeing as you have to open up the doors at the end of each room. So, it's essentially like doing a berry train where you have to make sure you don't collect the berry until the end of the room. Which is a cool concept, and I'm sure a lot of other people have thought of this before, but this map actually does execute it. Now technically the floor isn't lava, of course, because you can touch the floor, it's just the berry will collect after 14 frames, so it's best to be buffering your jumps, I suppose. The idea still remains though, you have to be on the floor for as little as possible, which is always fun in my opinion. And there's also these nice sort of safe spots which are marked by the ice walls here. Eventually you also end up finding out that apparently this whole thing is like a factory that grows key berries, which I don't know how that works necessarily, but like, okay. This map was probably one of the shortest ones out of the top 10, in fact it might actually just be the shortest one in general, but yeah, cool map, cool map. On the other hand, we've got the number 9 map, which is just called Celeste Chapter 6 Badland Fight. And in fact, it starts out pretty much the same as just the 6A Badland fight, until you hit Badland and what the hell, you're in an Undertale fight. So yeah, this map like actually completely surprised me when I first played it, because it seemed kind of weird just to have a Chapter 6 Badland thing. Like, of course I knew there was going to be some sort of twist to it. I did not expect to have a fully coded Undertale boss fight in the style of Badland. So honestly, shout out to all the code that was put into this to make it work. If you haven't seen Undertale, which is kind of surprising actually, the game features boss fights pretty much like this. It has a turn-based combat system where you and the enemy take turns in doing some sort of action. In Undertale, you have options like fighting, which just does direct damage to the enemy, as well as also acting or consuming some sort of healing item, which is exactly what you see in the Celeste map. After you do your action, the boss will fire stuff at your heart, which is what you have to use to dodge the attacks. You can think of it as a bullet hell type of thing. The strategy when fighting Badland is to first approach her in your action section of the menu. After you've approached Badland enough, you're able to dash into her to cause direct damage. And then it enters the second phase where the boss just starts firing even more stuff, this time the purple spinners from Reflection. I'll talk about the actual attacks here real quick, they're all very cool and very creative. It's just a combination of the standard red fireballs and red lasers, but also some of these purple spinners and like these weird exclamation marks that follow you around, I don't know what that is. The actual heart you control is styled after, I believe, the red B-side crystal heart, which is pretty clever because of course in Undertale you have the red heart, which represents the soul or whatever. The actual movement of the heart is very smooth. You can hold grab to move slower, which I never did, but it's still nice that it's there. There's also this crazy vinyl attack at the end, which I actually died to the first time. If you do die, there's this cool game over screen that shows up, where you can either try again or quit to the menu, which is exactly what happens in Undertale. That's about all I have to say there. Very cool map by L.A.V.A there. For our next map we've got, let's see here. Oh yeah, it was Apartment Complex in Time. I've got some stuff to say about this. So Apartment Complex in Time by Newwood is supposed to be some sort of horror-esque, disturbing puzzle style map, which is like, it's cool. I haven't really seen many horror maps in Celeste. The map opens up with this strange postcard here, which honestly I don't even know what it means. In the map itself, you're in a strange, dark, and very bizarre apartment complex without any music, which is actually a little uncomfy. The start of this map is mostly pure exploration, and it was a little tough to figure out where I was supposed to go initially, but eventually, in this whole huge, creepy, messy apartment, I stumbled upon this thing, which was labeled Crossing, and it quite literally took me to a whole separate map. Now this was clearly some sort of puzzle thing. This big wheel in the background probably indicated a dash code or something like that. Being honest, I have no clue what to do here. I just ended up debugging through here. I'm sorry, I don't hate map creators. I just hate puzzles. In fact, I just suck at puzzles. In total, there were 8 of these sublevels, which probably makes us one of the longest Breeze Contest maps, if not the longest. And of course, all of them were puzzle maps. No hate towards puzzle maps, but kinda hate towards puzzle maps, I don't know. I did like this purple section here. It has this light style puzzle where you move around beams of light using various types of moving blocks. The puzzles here at least made sense what I was supposed to do. It was kinda just a matter of arranging the blocks and light switches in the right order, which felt pretty damn satisfying to figure out. By the way, the music sounds like this here. Other parts I found cool was this green section here, which I wasn't able to figure out and debug through. I'm sorry. And also this like weird red creepy part. I don't even know what's going on here. This one was actually super fun because it was just a maze pretty much, and I honestly loved it. I think what this map reminds me the most of is the game Omori. I don't know if you've played Omori. I'm not going to spoil it all that much here. But the vibe of Omori was very similar to this map, just because these sort of creepy, distorted settings in this map were very reminiscent of stuff that I saw in Omori. Yeah, anyway, that's Apartment Complex in Time. I'm not sure if I enjoyed it as much as the other two. It was very cool. I loved the atmosphere, for sure. The puzzles themselves, not so much, but that's just kind of my issue with not being good at puzzles. The puzzles themselves are actually very well designed overall. Okay, now for number 7, Blue Emperor by Above Zucchini. So Zucchini is a creator that I've seen before. I've played his maps before, such as Vivid Abyss. I've only ever known Zucchini as a more high-level gameplay creator, so I was pretty interested to see what sort of stuff he'd make for a beginner map. The main gimmick were these cassette blocks here, but they switched every time you dashed, so it made for a pretty cool combination of routing puzzle plus just general gameplay. Well, I say routing, it wasn't that much routing. The gameplay was relatively straightforward to read. The decoration and visuals were peak. It reminds me a lot of the map Frosted Fragments from Strawberry Jam, which is actually one of my favorite intermediate lobby maps. But I'd argue that Blue Emperor does this ice aesthetic even better than Frosted Fragments. The song also reminds me of Omori actually, specifically the song Remember to Be Patient from the Omori OST, which plays in that one area, if you know, you know, you know. What? The name Blue Emperor itself is actually referencing the Blue Emperor butterfly. In fact, you end up reaching this area here which has multiple branching paths, and in each of them is essentially a different type of butterfly. At the end of each path, you'll find a note that paints some sort of narrative with these peculiar words highlighted like, up, left, what could this mean? Perhaps some sort of dash code? Indeed, there is a dash code here. You just have to follow these butterflies here, where each of the butterflies represent a different branching path. I also ended up missing the dash code the first time. That is my bad. Just like pay attention to the notes and you'll be fine, I think. Doing the dash code takes you down to this underground icy area, which I thought was a bit out of place compared to the rest of the map because it does take a pretty big shift in the visual design. Gameplay was still fun though regardless, so I'm not complaining too much. With all that out the way though, this might sound crazy, but I enjoyed the map. Good job to everyone who contributed to making this map. Now for the number 6 spot, we got Mercury's Shade, which I think this is the map I'm going to talk about the least. This map is just very solid, but I wouldn't say there's anything particularly special about this map, or at least it doesn't do anything exceptional compared to other Celeste maps I've played. The decoration has a very nice purple aesthetic, which I'm always a fan of because purple is a very good color. The main gimmick of the gameplay are these green zippers here, which are pretty much just a combination of the Kevin and the zip mover blocks. You dash into it like a Kevin and it moves to a set point just like a zipper. If you've played Azure Caverns from the Strawberry Jam beginner lobby, you'd know how these work. This map got ranked as the number 1 map for gameplay, which I concede for sure. This is about as smooth and flowy of gameplay as you can make, with it still being in the beginner difficulty range. And for all these reasons, I think that this map is pretty neat. And now for number 5 is the map It All Goes Downhill From Here by Fant. This map was awesome because you know what it had? It had lore, it had story. All the maps so far have had a tinge of story like the Blue Emperor one and the apartment complex in Time one, but this one especially had lore. In fact, it starts off with Madeline apparently time traveling and being sent to some strange time. This guy over here informs Madeline that we're apparently in the year 2076 in a land called the Yukon, which is like that one province in Canada, question mark? I did not think Canada would look like this in the future. Apparently a lot of humanity has moved on to other planets in this year, which I don't know how realistic that is, but okay, I'll just roll with it, you know? This map had a strong atmosphere, like really strong atmosphere, because the visuals were like surprisingly simple. You can see here there's not a lot of like decals here. There's only really the foreground tiles, the background tiles, and of course the style ground, but they all still make for a very strong post-apocalyptic aesthetic, which is, I think, what this map is trying to portray. The gameplay is completely dashless and revolves around these moving blocks going down, because, get it, the map is called It All Goes Downhill From Here. You oftentimes see parts where you have to sort of optimize your speed to keep on pace with the moving blocks. And what I gotta say about this gameplay is I think if it was any difficulty higher, it would have been so annoying. Because you're able to keep the player paced with the moving blocks, but not to such a strict extent that it starts to feel unfun, which I think it absolutely would have ended up feeling that way in any sort of high difficulty. So gameplay is very well executed in that regard. About halfway through the map, maybe a little over, you end up reaching this village here, which I thought was a super cool touch, because it really adds a lot to the world building. In the village you end up meeting this professor guy who works for like Earth Research something. He provides some more context about what's going on here. Apparently there was some big ass nuclear war in 2043 that killed off a bunch of people. Sounds like pretty standard Canada stuff. Then you get a key to apparently the Highlands, which is sort of like the final checkpoint of the map. The only thing different in the Highlands is just that these funky dream bubbles get added, which are they're pretty cool, you know? The map ends with this final ride on this moving block up into the heart. So as you could probably imagine, I love this map a lot, mostly because of the world building. The gameplay and stuff was still cool of course, but I think the story taking such a big turn compared to all the other maps is really what makes me like it so much. But did Madeline actually get back to the present? Who knows? I hope she did, because she talked about the crystal heart being some sort of way to fix the time machine or something. Yeah, anyway. Number 4, Shrine of Soul by Sunset Quasar. The Shrine of Soul opens up in a completely dark setting. I think we've seen this before somewhere. Upon reaching the center of the temple, you're presented with 4 branching paths, each of which lead to a separate key. We've also seen this before. The gameplay gimmick here were these blue bubbles, which act like red bubbles, but you control when they end by releasing the dash button, which were honestly a little tough to get used to initially. I'm not even too sure why. Past that, it's pretty standard stuff. You do each path, collect the keys, and once you collect all the keys, you can open this thing in the middle, which plays this cool animation, and suddenly the whole temple is lit up. The temple being lit up pretty much starts the part 2 of this map, where all the branching paths have altered gameplay, which is always cool to see in my opinion, because it keeps the map feeling very compact. Instead of collecting keys for each path, you find a note that has some sort of pledge to the god of the sun, I'm not even too sure. And in a very similar fashion to what Blue Emperor did, there is a hidden dash code in the corner of these notes. And guess what that means? Yeah, a puzzle, a dash code. I was not able to figure this out again, and I had to look it up. And looking back, I'm still not too sure how the dash code necessarily works. There was this note here that said something about a fool being confused about their lefts and rights and tops and bottoms. It's probably relevant, but I'm too stupid to figure it out. Oh gosh, maybe I'm the fool it's talking about. Anyway, doing this mysterious dash code gives you the heart, ending off the level right there. So kinda sucks that I wasn't able to figure out the dash code, but it is what it is, and outside of that, I really enjoyed this map. Alright, now we're entering the top 3 with our number 3 map, Lönnland. Oh, sorry,
Lönnland.
Lönnland. I think I'm gonna stick to the other pronunciation. Now, Lönnland is possibly one of the most gimmicky maps I've seen in the Breeze contest. In fact, I'd say it's the second most gimmicky map, just behind the number 2 map, which you'll have to wait and see what that is. For those who don't know, the Celeste level editor is called Lon, and this map was styled right after it. Lon has this sort of magenta pink and light blue color scheme, which is a really pretty color scheme, and the map being styled directly after it makes it look very nice. At the start of the map, you get introduced to this raccoon looking fellow, who's like a recurring NPC throughout the whole map, and you shortly get introduced to the main gimmick of this map, the Lon Shrines. These let you have full control over these blocks here, which you have to rearrange in a certain way, so it's kinda like puzzle solving. But the type of puzzles that I'm actually good at, as opposed to a lot of other stuff in this contest. Of course, this is referencing the map editor and how you have full control over where you place and move blocks across the stage. I think you can probably see how this map won 3rd place. I'd say its custom mechanic is either the first or the second most creative custom mechanic across the whole top 10. One criticism I'll give here though is I think the spinners here blend way too much in with the rest of the map. I often found myself completing a puzzle and then running into a spinner because I didn't notice it was a hazard, which I think is a problem. You gotta make the hazards stand out compared to the rest of the visuals, but whatever. In some rooms you had to move lawn blocks that had lawn shrines on them, so it created this sort of back and forth pattern where you were constantly switching between the shrines. Again, the puzzle solving made a lot more sense to me because it was very clear what approach I had to take when solving each room, and I generally enjoy those types of puzzles more. This map has some sort of progression system, I think, where you have to go through multiple checkpoints and end up on this like sort of final trial, I think, maybe, I don't know. A section I enjoyed was here, where the main goal was to move this lawn shrine out of this assortment of blocks. It almost reminds me of a certain puzzle in the Hotland area of Undertale, where you have to also move these blocks around kinda... yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this actually. Oh, and I gotta mention that at some point you end up destroying this guy's house here by moving the walls and the ceiling away. So like, sorry about that, mate. Anyway, that concludes about all I have to say about Lönnland. Extremely gimmicky map, but surprisingly not as gimmicky as the number 2 map, which is... They made golf in Celeste? Oh my god, of course they did. Number 2, par for the course. Oh my god, this map is awesome. This one pretty much says, screw traditional Celeste gameplay, we're gonna make golf. At the start of the map you're introduced to how golfing works. You move the club with the up and down arrows, and you hold dash to swing the club with force. This map was similar to Apartment Complex in time, in the sense that there was a big central lobby where you could access smaller maps. This time there were only 3, but there were the 3 different golf courses, each of varying difficulty. I also gotta mention that you can change the color of your golf ball by speaking to this dog here, which is like, okay, sure. Now I haven't played a whole lot of golf before, but the Celeste map has a rule set that I'm assuming would be similar to what you'd see in an actual golf game. Every course has a sort of standard amount of shots that they expect you to take, which is called the par. If the amount of shots it takes you to get the ball into the hole is below the par, that's called a birdie. If it's above, it's called a bogey, and you can even get a double bogey, which is just truly tragic. And if you get it in 1, that's just called a hole-in-one and is the best possible score you can get. I'm curious if it's possible to get a hole-in-one in every single course. I'd assume not, because some of the courses seem like they might need a little bit of thinking to figure out how to get a hole-in-one. At the end of each course, it shows you how many times you were above or below the par for each individual room, so in this case, negative numbers are good. Do not question what happened in hole 9, by the way. If you get a certain score at the end of it all, you get a strawberry, which I think is pretty cool. It encourages quite a lot of replayability. I personally didn't get the strawberries, but still. Each of the 3 courses brings something new to the gameplay. The first course has these moving platforms on a cycle, the second course has these moving blocks, like in chapter 4, and the third course is completely low gravity and has springs. I think it's so cool that golf, a completely unrelated thing, was implemented in such a way that it still felt like Celeste. While this might be kinda old by now, I do remember when Terraria added golf in its 1.4 update. It was pretty different to anything else in the game, but it still worked out really well. Pretty much, more games should add golf, even if it seems like it wouldn't fit at all. This was apparently the creator's first time coding anything, and I'd say it turned out fantastic regardless. I think you can see what I mean when I say this map is gimmicky as all hell. This is probably one of the most creative custom mechanics I've ever seen across all of Celeste. So there you go, Par for the Course by Spooky. Just a single map remains. Above all else, what is it that won first place? The Nothing Man, full album by Nyan. Here's our number 1 map, and it's interesting for sure. Okay, so I absolutely see how this map won first place. It's kind of like a story map, but it tells its story through a more environmental and subtle way, and interestingly enough through its music. Yeah, this map has 10 different songs that represent 10 different checkpoints of the map, created by Porter Robinson and, oh god, Kendrick Lamar. I hadn't heard any of those songs before playing this map because they're really not the type of music I listen to at all. The gameplay in this map largely varies from part to part, but I found myself enjoying most of it. Either way, I wouldn't say the gameplay is the main focus of the map, more so the weird and interesting ways it tries to convey a story. You've got parts that are literal cutscenes that tell its story through dialogue, and some parts that are more figurative and abstract. Throughout the map you hear mentions of themes like finding internships and applying for jobs, and being lazy and playing Celeste all day. Oh god, I'd never do that. You've got scenes that are completely grey and have these weird subliminal messages popping up. You've got parts where you climb a strange tower and end with Madeline doing some sort of internal monologue. You've got this museum here that shows off various Celeste maps and even talks about how the creator potentially wants to remake the maps. I don't know if the maps mentioned are actual Celeste maps, I'd assume they are, but in the checkpoint right after you actually do see the remakes of all these maps and all the ways that they've taken inspiration. There is a lot of stuff to unpack in this map, and I really can't go through all of it in just the span of time. So honestly, my final takeaway is just to go play through the map yourself and experience it from your own perspective. It's all beginner gameplay anyway, nothing has a really steep learning curve, except for maybe this reverse bubble section. This was kinda crazy. This map still ended up being vastly different to anything I've ever experienced in Celeste before, and for that, I think that this map is awesome. Thanks for watching my extremely professional review of the top 10 Breeze Contest maps. Yeah, this topic is pretty niche, but I was interested in this mod when I saw it released, cause I always like seeing what people make in this game. Also, my apologies for the abhorrent FPS in this video. That's what I get for recording on a MacBook. Yeah, anyway, goodbye.